Alright, howdy folks, how we doing? Okay, you can see the top. Just jumping on to do a quick review on this top. This is the Adrienne Blouse by Friday Pattern Company. Now this isn't a review on the instructions because I didn't follow them. I barely read them. And I've only kind of read them more now going back to do this review to try and figure out some of the things that I made mistakes on. It's nothing to do with the pattern. Anyway, this is a super easy blouse. It's been around for a little while now, so I'm a little bit late to the party. But I mean, I think it's still very on trend with these big sleeves. Yeah, so just quickly, this fabric, I use this fabric for the toile. I've made this one to the pattern exactly as it is. This is a size medium. I do not follow the seam allowance, so it has come out bigger than the normal size medium. And I knew that would happen because I don't follow the seam allowance. The fabric is from Pit Trading. It is a quite thin lurex knit with this leopard print in it. I got it very, very cheaply. Like they do these like $10 5-meter rolls or something when they're trying to get rid of something. And it's not like, I don't like wearing brown. I have a thing about wearing brown. Brown makes me feel depressed. But I thought I can usually get away with leopard print. It's a leopard. I thought I'd feel okay. I don't really. So I use this fabric for toiles. What's the stretch content, do we reckon? Excuse me. 10 centimeters. Fold it there where it doesn't have a thread through it. It's probably about 40% stretch. And I think the pattern calls for 25% or more, which is also, so I made a medium. I only use my overlocker, so the seam allowance that I used is about 6 mil. I have since learnt that the seam allowance on the pattern is 5/8 of an inch. I don't work in inches. It's about 1.5 centimeters. 5/8 of an inch is just under 7 centimeters and a half. Which is a big seam allowance, I think, particularly for stretch, but whatever, besides the point. Okay, so what do I have to say about the pattern? It is super, super easy to put together. And it's in fact so impressive how easy they made it. Because like the front and the back piece are the same. The band obviously is the same, front and back. And obviously the sleeves, each sleeve. So that's 3 pattern pieces. It's super easy. The way that the sleeve is cut makes it very, very easy to put the elastic casings on. They're just like fold over casings. So no binding or anything. And yeah, really easy. If you were wondering, which I was, it prints out on 1 A0 sheet. So for printing, it's really cheap. Here in Australia, I don't know if Officeworks have different prices across Australia, but here in Perth, it's I think $4.80 to print an A0 sheet at Officeworks. So cost-wise, pretty good because yeah, A0 printing for us is a bit expensive. Okay, so there is an error on the pattern, but it is so tiny it's not funny. And it's an error that I noticed because I have done it myself very, very recently. I got some patterns that I did for leotards back from the factory. They'd gone in for sampling. And I noticed the patterns had all had, like, so, all right, back up. I noticed that, like, the pattern on the leotard, so the leotard leg, had all been clipped at the very, very edge. And I thought, oh, I forgot about the seam allowance. That's why they've done that. Because you should, and they've done the same thing here. So this is the front bodice piece. Can we see that? And the back bodice piece, and it's cut on fold. Then at the very bottom here, so on the hemline, the hem seam allowance is only 1/2 inch, worth noting. it just keeps pointing out when actually it should tuck back in again because you're folding that bit in. And so this end piece should be just as wide as it is that 1 inch up from the edge so that it goes back in nicely. It's the same concept as how they did the sleeve. So you can see, where are we? On the top of the sleeve, this is the bit that folds back in. So it springs out so that it's just as wide as it is when it hits where it goes when it folds over. Yeah? Oops, can you even see that? No. There, so that bit that folds in will fold over and be just as wide as... I've got a different idea. Oh. This is my traced pattern piece. So, whoop. Sorry, some drawing on there from where I made my modifications. I did do another version of this top, which I will show you, which I did a whole bunch of modifications to the pattern. Because I like to make things really complicated. It's a compulsion I have. And this pattern is so beautifully simple that I'm highly jealous. Yeah, so when this folds back, so it goes like that, looks, you can see that little angle on there, and then when it folds over, the angle is just as wide as that bit of sleeve. And the bodice piece, the hem on the bottom doesn't do that, like it'll stick out. It'll be just that little bit too big. It's 4 millimeters. Yeah, it's nothing. It's 4 millimeters. But as a pattern maker, we tend to be really anally retentive about these things, about millimeters. All right, what that does, so just if you're wondering, you've done your hem and you think, oh, that just doesn't sit right, and you can probably, if I stand back far enough, can you see that it like really goes a little tick out at the sides? I mean, this wouldn't be so obvious if I had hips, but I don't really. Well, not that are significantly different from my waist anyway. But yeah, so if you've done the hem on this top and you think it doesn't sit perfectly, that's why. Just cut that little bit of extra 4 millimeters off and you'll be good. Okay, so yeah, I'm really, really happy with the top. But of course, I'm just compulsive obsessive about making changes. So I have made another one that is different. Yeah, so this is the size medium. I have at the moment, I have got to update my measurements. I've been in denial for a couple of months, but that time is over. My bust is now 38 inches. My waist is 31.5 inches. So 2 inches bigger than what I've been saying before. I think it's hormonal. Whole different story. I'll do a little chatty vlog about all that kind of stuff, I guess. Right, so as you can see, I'm fiddling with these straps. So this is probably the first thing that I wanted to change on the pattern. I only did 6 inches of elastic in here. This is a really soft knit. It really doesn't have any, I always forget that word, retraction, retention, recovery. Doesn't have very good recovery, so it stays stretched out. Probably would have helped if I'd have put elastic in this seam, but I didn't. And so yeah, if you're wondering what it looks like with a normal bra, which I'll put back on my shoulders where it normally goes, is that yeah, it's too wide on me. So yeah, I can't wear a normal bra with it, and I can't get away with not wearing a normal bra really. So yeah, I felt though, so the changes that I wanted to make, back on track, I didn't want it to scoop down so much. I wanted it to sit squarer. The pattern does scoop down, like that's very, very deliberate. the front bodice piece scoops. So very easy just to change that and make it square. So I did that. Then I wanted to take in a bit here because that's just sitting too wide and it would pull this in. Yeah, so if I take that bit in, it pulls that sleeve so it sits up on top of my shoulder. And this is where I started making complicated changes. So if I am pushing the sleeve up to sit further on my shoulder, it needs to have a sleeve head. And the pattern doesn't. The pattern doesn't because it has the really, really nice, completely straight right angle finish so that you can just bend your fabric over and create your casing for the elastic. Really, really nice. Really, really simple. I don't do simple, clearly. I have to make my life complicated. So to put a sleeve in, a sleeve head in, you are putting a curve on top of that line, which means you can no longer fold it in to do the elastic because it's too much of a curve. It'd be just annoying and difficult. Yeah, so putting a sleeve head on that sleeve because I'm narrowing this off. And on the front as well, I decided to lower it. So I'm squaring it and lowering it down. But then I also decided in the back that I wouldn't do that. I'd square it off, but I wouldn't lower it down. I'd keep it that high. So that meant that I had to change and have a front piece and a back piece, which I actually just folded down the front piece. But it did make a change on the sleeve because then the sleeve had to have a front and the back. It's not completely symmetrical. It would have to join lower at the front and be the same at the back. All right, more complications on the sleeve. I then decided this is completely square cut, just the same on the cuff as it is on the top. Nice and simple. Elastic goes in really easily. Beautiful. Now you may have seen before a lower sleeve piece where it's big and then it gathers into a cuff, or even if it's smaller and gathers, and even if it doesn't gather into a cuff. It may go dip down at the back and then dip up at the front. Yeah, that hemline. So where's my modified piece? This is my new sleeve piece with its, ignore those, with its sleeve head and its shaped hem. Now the reason for that is, okay, so lots and lots of lovely fullness and drape in this sleeve, but when I arch back and put my arm up, say, you know, because everybody walks around like this, it's perfectly normal, but then you've got, it's tight all the way through that line. And if I was pushing my sleeve up further, it would be too tight and it would be constantly pulling that sleeve off my shoulder. Because every time I, you know, moved around, it would pull. Yeah. So that's why I've changed that as well, which means that I can't do a fold back cuff into the elastic anymore. And so I decided on both of these pieces that I would do a binding. So a binding and then put the elastic in that, which actually accidentally made it a bit longer. I didn't cut the length off of here. So my new sleeve is half an inch longer. It's probably, yeah, probably 1.5 centimeters longer. So that's 5/8 of an inch. This thing I learnt today, which I will forget by the end of the day. Yeah, so the new sleeve is a little bit longer. Plus it's got a sleeve head, and I've made the new one in a much firmer fabric. So it's really quite a substantial sleeve now. Yeah, and the only other change that I made to the new pattern is because this bodice piece has curve cut into it. Right. So the shape of this side body line, that's really shaped. I have made it wider at the waist and a little bit narrower at the hip because I'm not that shape. I also, on the front piece, just sort of came out a little bit here on the bust line to give it a tiny extra bit more room on the front bust, because the new fabric that I used was white cotton spandex, and I did not want it to be tied across the bust and pulling across the bust or just showing too much because it's white across the bust. And then, because it was the cotton spandex, yeah, I made this really complicated. I decided to double layer the bodice pieces. So it's twice as thick, which meant that I didn't need this band anymore, because I could just do the two pieces together and sew them through the front like it was a lining. And so I didn't need to have the band. So I took out the band. The interesting thing on that, and you might be able to see, like on this one, I've got a slight issue here where I've had to make the band a little bit smaller to fit into that spot. The reason is because I messed up the seam allowance. So yeah, there's 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on the band and on the bodice piece, so that when you take that 5, and then the band itself is only 5/8 of an inch. So when you put the band on, it becomes the same size as the bodice piece was originally, but you've eliminated the seam allowances, if that makes sense. So when I took off the band, I didn't need to add anything to the length of the bodice piece because it actually walks, the pattern pieces walk in absolutely perfectly. And this band is about 1 inch, so it's too wide. And that's why that happened to me. Because I should have cut it down to 5/8 of an inch, and I should have taken a little bit more off of this. I should have taken off the extra bit of seam allowance that I didn't need, which is 9mm. So I've got double 9mm, 18mm, too much here that I then had to squidgy a little bit to fit into there. Yay! That was clear? Clear as mud. All right, let me show you the new one. Right, okay, so this is the new one. Ta-da! And the fabric is very different. So you can see that like it's got a lot more structure. This is a cotton spandex, mostly cotton, I think, and it's quite thick. And it just gives this ridiculous amount of structure. And these sleeves just look fantastic. Now with the mods, it is slightly longer because, as I mentioned before, I forgot the extra in the cuff that I was going to use a binding for. But I did take off the bit on the sleeve head for that, but then I added the sleeve head. So it does come up a bit bigger than the original pattern. Probably interesting to note, I think though, with this quite thick fabric, the previous shoulder elastic that I did was 6 inches. I didn't add any more length in the sleeve itself because I figured there's so much fullness in it, it'll be fine. But what did I say? So I've now made it 8 inches. I've now made this elastic in this new one because this neckline is lowered, 8 inches long, but still the fabric is so structured that like that is really dense. It's a lot to gather into. So if I was making this cotton spandex in the original design and I wanted to cut it down to 6 inches, it'd be pretty tough. I mean, you could do it, but she'd be dense. Yeah, so what I've done, because this is now a curved pattern piece and you can't just fold it over, I've done, I don't know if you can see it, it's like a binding, I guess. I've made a strip of fabric, just cut on the stretch, not cut on the bias or anything like that, just on the stretch. Overlocked it in to here like you would a facing, to turn over like a facing, but then just twin needle, or I use my cover stitched it down on that side to make the casing for the elastic. And basically exactly the same thing on the bottom as well, only wider because I use wider elastic on the bottom. So this is bra elastic, and this is it's some wider white elastic that I bought by mistake because it's really, really stiff, and I'm now trying to use it up in my own stuff rather than business stuff. But you can't really make it as tight as other elastic because it's just so stiff. So this is a little bit floppier than I'd like, but you know, I'm just using up this stuff up there. And again, really, with this quite thick fabric, there's a very dense gather on that cuff, and then closing off the elastic and sealing it up was a little bit of a struggle, particularly on the cover stitch, which my cover stitch doesn't have like an arm on it, like a narrow bit. It's just a flat bed. It's a little bit difficult, but it's all right. As I said, I made a whole lot of alterations just to make my life more difficult, because that's how I roll. And yeah, I didn't put the band on, and it's not, it doesn't sit completely square because obviously my chest pulls it down. But I think that looks pretty good. Again, I didn't put elastic in here, and I probably should have, and then I remembered mid-make in time to put elastic in the back piece. But to be honest, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. Having elastic in there. Anyway, so yeah, the back piece sits higher than the front, but both of them are brought in at this point about 1.5 centimeters in, so it's narrower there, and then the sleeve sits up on my shoulder, and the whole look is quite a bit squarer. I prefer the look to be squarer rather than that soft arch because I have a very round face and I don't need more round stuff going around. Everything else is round enough as it is. I prefer something a little bit more angular. Yeah, and yeah, so this is a double layer of cotton. It is more stretchy with more, again, recovery than the other fabric, so it pulls me in a lot more. And I did do the double layer so that you could see a lot less through the fabric, because white, it doesn't matter how thick it is, it's still very showy. But I'm pretty happy with that result. But because this is a 4-way stretch and not a 2-way stretch, like you saw the length on the leopard one, and it was probably what, that long, do we reckon? Let me back up here. That long? This one is much longer because it's a 4-way stretch. It comes down to here. I'm not going to pull it out for you because it's very unflattering across my stomach, and then I'll have to get it back in again. But it came up much longer, and that is just because of the 4-way stretch. The other one just doesn't stretch in that direction at all. This one goes forever. Yeah, I hope that was helpful. I feel like I've been talking at 1,000,000 miles a minute. I'm probably going to rewatch this and go, no, honey, you need to try again. But yeah, this is the Adrienne Blouse by Friday Pattern Company. Very heavily hacked. I don't really recommend you try doing that many hacks. If you want just a really simple, easy make to get a really dramatic, beautiful result, go with the original pattern. If the change in the neckline is that important to you, then yeah, we need to add a sleeve head and change the way that the elastic goes in, which is a bit boring, but anyway, I had that compulsion. I did it. Oh, I do have plans for another one. So I think I have mentioned it before. So the fabric mixing thing, so which I did my last video on. Maybe I'll do a card. Fabric mixing. I will probably do this pattern again, not the original pattern. And I'm going to do the sleeves in this non-stretch net. So you don't need to have a stretch fabric for the sleeves, I don't think. Like the stretch is not required at all unless it's absolutely necessary for you under the arm, but I've got plenty of room under the arm in here. It's not going to be a problem, I don't think. But yeah, I'm thinking so the ruffle, and I think, let me know what you think. I think the stripes should go down the arm. Across the arm. Yeah? That way, as it goes down. I think that's a very sort of vintagey kind of look that way. But the other way is, because it's non-stretch, it doesn't matter. Like that. I don't know, that does look cute too. Let me know what you prefer. This is stripes down the arm or ruffles. It's this is from Pit Trading again, but it was a remnant, so it's definitely all gone now. The white cotton is from Spotlight. Yep, so that one. And then the body I'll do in black velvet. I've got absolutely nowhere to wear a mesh and black velvet top, but that's the plan. I don't know if I'll be making it super soon. It does really appear that spring has come early, which obviously I love because I really like the warm weather. I live in Perth for the warm weather, and winter can go and poo-poo on itself. But I do still have a whole bunch of winter sewing plans that I haven't done. But now all I want to do is make summer stuff. I don't know. I mean, I guess this is not that wintry because the sleeves are completely sheer. So it's in fact got no sleeves. Like there's no warmth in those sleeves. It's just that the velvet bodice. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, should I just make it anyway, even though I'm probably not going to wear it? Lovely chatting. If you enjoyed this video, if it was helpful, you know, do those YouTubey things like and subscribe, and you know, chuck me a comment. I'm getting, I think I've messed up again somewhere on the comments. Well, not on the comments. I think there's messages on YouTube and I can't find them. I've gotten notifications of messages, I think, and then I've gone into the app and I can't find them. Look, I've gotten some editing down. I'm getting better at this business. You know, I'm still working on it, but yeah, I need to find out where the messages live. There's lots of stuff. It's complicated. Anyway, have a lovely day. Catch you later. Bye.